See, you can only love out of strength. It takes strength to love. You got to speak with purpose. We think that our salvation is based on performance. God is not a man that he can lie. He don't lie. You be a vessel that God can work. Because somebody might need your holy prayer to save them when they... Hi, this is Dr. Will Wheat, and tonight we're going to start maybe a two-part series, and we're going to entitle this "The Doctrine of Sin." And before you jump to any conclusions, I think that before we can move forward in our teaching on miracles, we're going to have to address the elephant that's in the room. You know, there's some things that I like to say that may need to be said for some of you, may not need to be said for others. But, you know, I've been pastoring where I am now for 27 years this year. In fact, April of this year will make the 27th anniversary of our pastorship. So my pastorship, my installation was in 1990. Now, prior to that, I had been a assistant pastor and an elder, a teacher, Bible school teacher, Sunday school teacher, and I worked in many different facets around the church. I've been in church since I was 7 years old. At the recording of this video, I'm 63 years old. So when I was set into the pastorate, I was 36, and I was installed in April, and I was 36 years old. Following in May, I would have been 37. So I've been pastoring and leading this work for 27 years. I only say that just to let you know that we have come a long ways, and we've heard many, many teachings, and we've been growing in knowledge, and we've been growing in understanding. I've come to find out that you're gonna learn and you're gonna acquire knowledge, but at the end of knowledge is God. When we get to God, there's no need for knowledge, because He is our knowledge. He is our awareness. He is all knowledge, and you just can't have more knowledge than God has. So when you come to the end of knowledge, you will discover God. So on this learning expedition that we have in life, we have drawn it out. When actually it can happen within an instant. But we've made it years, we made it decades, this learning. We will obtain our goal, but it does not necessarily need to be obtained in a lifetime, when it can be obtained in a holy instant. And hopefully in our teachings about miracles, we'll get to that holy instant. But we need to take a little side road here, so that some of the outrageous things that I say out of excitement can be understood. And I've come to find out that a lot of things that I'm saying, I'm speaking particularly to my church and to the audience who's been with me most of the 27 years. So there's a lot of things I don't say, a lot of things I don't go over, based on some teachings that we've already had, some places and some milestones that we've already crossed and achieved in our learning and in our spiritual growth. So I won't repeat certain things. So if you're hearing it for the first time, it may sound outlandish, and you'd be saying, well, where in the world did you come up with this when I have all these other types of scriptures to confirm my belief system? So we entitled this the Doctrine of Sin. Now, my pastor, Pastor Floyd Miller, taught this, and I was in the classes where he taught this teaching as well as other teachings, the doctrine of the Holy Spirit, the doctrine of sin, the doctrine of church. It was a part of his Bible school. And so the book that he taught from was written by Dr. Harold L. Livington. Now, not only did he teach from this book, but as I became a professor at his school, I also taught from this book as well. Now, just here are some of the chapters, and the title of the chapters that's in the book. It says, the definition and meaning of sin. Number 2, the origin of sin. And then under that is the origin of sin into the universe, the origin of sin into the world. Chapter 3, the nature of sin. You have sin is not eternal. Sin is not merely the absence of good. Sin is not simply the weakness or frailty of the human flesh. D, sin has no standard of its own. E, sin and evil cannot really manifest themselves as such, but must, to some extent, be disguised as good. F, sin must not only disguise itself as the good, but it must also actually connect itself to the good. G, a figure or feature of evil not usually considered is that it must often strive against itself. H, even though we have used sin and evil interchangeably thus far, the terms are sometimes to be distinguished from each other. Then the fourth chapter, the universality of sin, the testimony of history, the testimony of consciousness, the testimony of religions, the testimony of the scriptures, the testimony of our children. Then chapter 5, the extending sinfulness of sin, the angelic proof, the human proof, the divine proof. Then number 6, it says the consequences of sin upon Lucifer, upon man, upon nature, upon the holy angels, upon God himself. 7, the imputation of sin. 8, the kinds of sin. 9, the metaphors of sin. 10, the Christian's sin. 11, the reasons for sin. 12, the ultimate and final victory over sin. And so those are the topics that we talked in Bible school. Those are some of the topics that we taught in our church, in our Sunday schools, in our men's fellowship, in our women's fellowship, common ground fellowships. We taught on sin, and the purpose of teaching on it was that we had a heart, and we still have a heart, for men not to be controlled by sin, that they come into the realization of what Jesus has done for them, that sin should not and cannot master them. So we've grown up in these types of terminologies that you just heard. And so when I'm speaking from not antiquity, but from a history of what I believe is thorough teaching, but we're moving forward into a brighter light and revelation. So in moving forward to that brighter light and revelation, it's for the purpose of bringing us to a place where we ourselves realize what we have received as an inheritance from God in Christ Jesus. That Jesus' work is accomplished in us, and that we all need to do is just receive what God has done for us. We don't have to do anything. In fact, God invites us into rest. He invites us into rest because Paul says it very succinctly in Corinthians when he says, your body nor your spirit, all right, nor your soul belong to you. It belongs to God. And it's not just that it's been purchased and brought with a price and it belongs to God because it's been ransomed, but because God inhabits all three areas of your life. He lives through you. One of my favorite scriptures is Galatians 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ, yet it's no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. The life that I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God. It's not even my faith, who gave himself. He loved me, he gave himself for me. And then my declaration is, I will not set aside the grace of God. But righteousness came by the law, then Christ died in vain. To me, that verse of scripture just speaks mountains of revelation. I have to lay a hold of that revelation and make it mine. Live it out in my conversation, in my thought, in my imagination. And when I start to do that, a lot of things fall away. A lot of things don't reign as true as they once did in my earlier years of Christianity or my earlier years of being a believer. So we want to share those things. We want to move forward into this magnificent grace that has been delivered to us and tap into the riches that has been stored in us by the Spirit of God. We have been made the sons of God. Now we have to start asking some serious questions, especially about sin and our attitude about sin. Well, I'm gonna take this in bits and pieces and not try to elongate it and make it a long video. Just chop it up a little bit so that you can receive what God is saying to you a little bit at a time, and we can nourish some things, and we can think about some things, and we can pray about some things, and we can ask some questions about other things, and have God, by His Spirit, answer those questions. Some of those questions I answer on the video. Some of those questions God will answer for you purposely, but if you don't ask the question, you won't get the answer. Well, I'm out of time for this video. We will be back shortly with another one to continue this thought. But until that time, I want you to remember that God has plans for your life, and none of those plans include defeat.
People of Greater Los Angeles, Apostle Will Wheat has a word from God that is revealing, powerful, and life-changing. Every Sunday, lives are being transformed by this powerful word from God. Families, businesses, church leaders, and the world are hearing God's plans for their lives. And none of those plans include defeat. It has been said that there have been Jesus sightings in His services. So you owe it to yourself to be a part of one of the greatest movements and Jesus sightings that this city has ever experienced. And you can download Apostle Wheat's Sunday messages for free at nccfc.net. nccfc.net. Sunday services are at 1 p.m. and midweek services are Wednesdays at 7 p.m. There is faith for your destiny at nccfc.net.